Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Tonight's class, we're not going to talk about supplements. We're not going to talk about the amazing testing with kinesiology. We're going to talk about the most important thing that has to do with your long-term health, and that's to really scrutinize and evaluate your personal lifestyle and dietary habits. Okay? So I like to call it, the subtitle of this class is Putting Your Health in Order. Okay? Now, order is, there's an acronym to this, and this is something that we came up with, that we're pleased to kind of have as a foundational stepping stone to all the training things that we do, whether we're working with clients such as yourselves, wholesalers across the country, virtual visits, whatever, okay? And the acronym is very simple. It stands for Objective Resources to Demonstrate, Evaluate, and Refine. The objective of tonight's class, and I think that everything we do or try to do should have a specific objective, right? What do we want the outcome for tonight to be? My responsibility, I feel, is to kind of stand in the gap between you guys and your continuing nature to run off the cliff, right? Modern medicine's amazing. It produces miracles every single day. No one disputes that. Lives are saved. There's probably been 100 people saved since we started this 2 minutes ago. In this country, you know what I mean? I mean, it's just, there's no disputing that, okay? But when it comes to chronic illness and not paying attention to pattern recognition of health illness developments, and then what is the cause of that, or could be driving that, it's kind of a miserable failure, unfortunately, in the chronic illness arena. Rehabilitation, maybe not so much, but the getting there. My job is to say, Misty, there's a cliff over there, and if you keep going down the path you're going to hit that cliff. Now, I just want you to know, right? Modern medicine's really good at, when Misty's all about falling off the cliff, they're really good at grabbing you and bringing you back, see? That's the difference. This approach is designed to keep you from continuing to head towards the cliff, okay? So that's really the objective, to give you the nutritional basics that none of us were given in school, ever, okay? The resources that we're going to cover tonight, I've got a plethora of resources. There's probably 2 years worth of researchable data in tonight's handouts, probably 2 years worth of kind of playing with it part-time, reading through, this appeals to me, that sounds good, hey, I want to try this, hey, I got a friend that needs that, right? I mean, that's how in-depth tonight's class is going to be. I don't encourage you to research it. You can if you want to, or if you ask me about my sources, then I'll certainly give them to you for those that love to do the research kind of thing, okay? You're certainly welcome to do that. Our research is based on relying on the experiences of others and then our own personal experiences, right, over an extended period of time. And that's really the best research center there is. Demonstrate practical ways that you can apply the information, not just discuss it. Of course, we want to encourage open discussion on what we're going to talk about tonight, okay? I encourage that. Tonight's class is your opportunity to ask all those questions that we may seem a little rushed in visits to get through, or, gosh, I wish I'd have asked that, and you're 20 minutes away from the clinic, right? That kind of thing does happen. So tonight we're going to have an opportunity, we're going to take the time to have that open discussion and have those questions. And I can assure you, if I don't have the answer, I'll help you get it, okay? I'm not going to wing it. We're going to evaluate over the coming weeks, months, and years how we will see how you respond and also what your experience has been. In other words, when you start applying these things, different things that stand out to you in tonight's material, and you apply them over a period of time, you can share back with me, I did this and this is how my body responded, right? Sometimes it's a little aggressive, we don't like it, right, Andrew?
Yeah. Not
fun. And he was absolutely truthful in what he shared with me about, my God, 2 days in, and I'm like, and I'm like, that doesn't happen, and so, But our job is to stand in the gap between you and harm's way with your health. So when we hear that kind of thing, that can't be right? But we'll get it figured out. Once you've demonstrated the use, we're going to actually evaluate that. We'll refine it based on your experience. Can we refine your approach so that you can apply this better in the future and develop the most important thing, which is lasting lifestyle and dietary habits. So that's really the goal of putting your health in order. Each of you has your own personal health objective. Each of you needs specific, well thought out, practical resources to get you there. But then you got to put forth the effort and demonstrate that use so that we come back together, we evaluate the process, and we can refine it as we go, right? And that it's just an amazing process. Here's the 4 pillars that you want to be aware of. It's no different than my massage table that we do our exams on. There's 4 legs on that table. And I can put this man who's a big strapping man, I can put him on that table and I shook it with him. It's very stable, okay? The 4 pillars, right, of our health are listed here. First thing we want to talk about is diet. We're going to give you a lot of resources on diet and how to modify your habits over time. I will tell you that it takes 3 to 6 months minimum, sometimes longer, to develop these new habits. This is not something that's going to happen overnight. Here's the mindset that we have to get out of. We live in such a quick fix mentality mindset civilization today that we think this should also be like that, right? And it's not. I've never seen anybody develop type 2 diabetes overnight. It took a lot of erosion to get there, okay? Never seen anybody develop cardiovascular disease and thrombosis and allergies, all this. These things don't just happen. Things happen just, but it takes time, okay? And we got to reverse the flow of that. Now here's the good news. It never takes as long to feel better and perform better than it did to get ill and stay ill. The reversing of that flow is always less time to get there. That's always optimistic. That's encouraging. Rest, not just sleep, but emotional disconnect. I can't tell you how many times people, probably 80% of the people that talk to me about their sleep patterns, they say I wake up and then my mind takes off and I can't go back to sleep. That's an emotional disconnect that's not happening. There is an emotional disconnect that's not happening, okay? And there's some techniques that we can give you for that to help leave the office at the office, okay? And help with that kind of thing. But you've got to disconnect, right? And the problem is we have these things, right? We're constantly connected, right? You can find out how many people died in China 2 hours ago in that bus crash, right? In the 70s, when I was growing up, you didn't hear about that stuff for days, maybe, right? There was some kind of tragedy. Oh, there was something happened? Now we're plugged into that stuff every moment of every day, and it does affect the emotions. So we got to learn how to de-stress and rest, emotion, and stress. De-stress practices, obviously journaling, prayer meditation, and movement. This movement thing is kind of interesting to me because I'll tell you, I'm one of these guys that years ago, I spent 18 months going to the gym every day and I beat the bark off myself, didn't lose an ounce. Okay, and I got a before and after picture I'm going to share with you tonight of me when I was not paying attention to my 4 disciplines properly, okay? And there's a more story that goes along with that. But I got a friend of mine who boasts about the fact that I go to the gym 6 days a week and I move 80,000 pounds a week by hand. And I said, well, nobody I work with is going to do that. Give me the most important basics of this pillar to our health, which is movement. And he says, very simple, for the most basic person, regardless of age, there are 3 things that we all want to be able to have. We want to have some strength, we want to have some stamina, and we want to have some flexibility. So he says, here's your weights, here's your bicycle, brisk walking, treadmill, and there's your stretching exercises. And I've got a sheet that's front and back of some of the most amazing stretching exercises. It takes 15 minutes a day. Now, do you have to do all 3 of these every day? Do you? No. You could do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or do 2 on Monday and 1 on Tuesday, and then, you know what I'm saying? Make it fit you. 15 to 20 minutes each. Just 15 to 20 minutes. But the consistency is what pays off. Because that's what develops the habit. Okay? Habits are hard to break. How many of you have ever heard that bad habits are good? Guess what? So's a good one. So's a good one. Habit's a habit. Whether it's good or bad is immaterial. It's just in relation to the person and the thing that we're talking about. A habit's a habit. Good or bad is not the issue. The issue is both are hard to break. And when you develop the good ones, they're hard to break. There he is. There he is. That's what happens when you don't pay attention to the 4 pillars. This was about 5-6 years ago maybe. So I'm doing this work full time, had been for a long time. And stress and lack of movement. So then I went to the gym for 18 months prior to this and beat the bark off myself and didn't lose an ounce. Did an interview with a guy who was, at one time he was facing a back surgery. His idea of movement, his idea of a fun weekend was to, as in his words, log as much couch time as he possibly could for the weekend. Log that couch time. He was on a lot of pain medications. He was 55 pounds overweight, something like that. And I interviewed him for my podcast and asked him what he did. He told me. He, 45 years old, I think, 45 or 47 this year. The guy does triathletes now. He never had to have the back surgery. He's off the medications. He's lost 47 or 48 pounds. And he's actually doing triathlon. He flies to like places like San Diego and does weekend events now, okay? From that condition to where he's at now. And he's on my podcast. His name's Aaron Martin, and you should look him up. He really went savage on keto. Now, I'm not telling anybody to go savage on any specific diet, but I am telling you, you already have a diet, and that's what needs to be evaluated. You already have dietary habits, and it needs to be evaluated, okay, over time. But there was a couple of things that when he was sharing in his video, or in his interview, that came up, and I said, you know what, I want to do that, and I'll do that, because I know those are 2 of my weaknesses. I stopped going to the gym cold turkey, did not pick up another weight, or a treadmill, right, or stretching exercise, changed the fuel, after my experiment, changed the fuel in my body completely by these 2 things. I'm going to tell you what the 2 things are in a minute. Completely cut out these 2 things, lost 36 pounds, boom to boom, okay, and never came back. That was years ago. Now I'm back in the gym. I have put on, from that 36, I put on between 6 and 8 pounds, somewhere in there. But that's from going to the gym. Not because I changed my diet. Back to something bad. And here's the 2 things I cut out of my diet 100%. You ready? This is just going to be a revelation. No potatoes of any kind, white or russet, and no bread of any kind. No grains. Quinoa is a seed. Buckwheat is not a grain, technically, but no barley, oats, wheat, corn, rice, none of that processed. None of those processed things at all. And I didn't go to the gym. Didn't pick up an ounce. 36 pounds. There's a couple of books that aren't in your resources tonight, but as I'm sharing this, you need to know about them. One is Wheat Belly. You need to read the book Wheat Belly. I don't know, ask me the author right now. But the name of the book is Wheat Belly. And another one from Michelle Oliver, a good training coach in Colorado, who's done an amazing amount of work in this area. She wrote a book called Buddha Belly. She's amazing. Did you know that the blood-brain barrier and the gut-brain health that's so popular now, which by the way is not new, it's just new to some people, and they're screaming about it because it's so cool. It's not new at all. That 75% of serotonin and 50% of dopamine that's used by the brain is produced in the gut? It's not produced in the brain at all, and it's not a brain chemical deficiency, and it's not a drug that can be corrected by these SSRI drugs and things of that nature. When 75% of serotonin and 50% of your dopamine is produced in your gut, this is the most important brain, because if this one's not taken care of, it overrules this one. We see it in kids all the time. When I was in school, ADD, ADHD didn't exist. Tubes in kids' ears, see them with tubes to take pressure off because their heart is so weak it can't push the fluid off. We didn't see that when I was growing up. And then I think it's tragic that we drive through modern communities these days and see these placards on the school fences that say drug-free zone, and you know darn good and well that nurse is shelling out her share of drugs. Right? It's really gone south. So here's some of the resources. I'm going to briefly, we're not going to go into detail on this tonight, I'm going to briefly introduce you to what should be in your packet. And then we'll finish up on the most important stuff at the end, okay? So here's what it should be in your packet in this order. You should have a daily nutritional diet, which is a one-page handout, and then behind it there should be 4 pages to back it up. That's what should be in your handouts. There's a 1-page daily nutritional diet and then a 4-page sheet that gives a breakdown of the 6211 food. We're going to break that down tonight. Okay? That should be there. I'm not going to go into detail on that, but I will give you here shortly the reference information on where that came from and the gentleman who I consider to be one of the many nutritional therapy pioneers in the last 100 years who gave it to us. The next sheet that's in there should be your Healthy Foods A to Z. Healthy Foods A to Z should be the next handout. This is an insert. I did this handout in 2003 or 2004. I spoke at the Garden Club, the Growers Association here in town, the Garden Club, I think it is, Cheyenne Garden Club. And I asked my dad, because I'm still a rookie, I said, what should I bring as a resource that would be valuable to him? So well, just put together a list of foods, because if they're growing and they got greenhouses and they're growing, maybe they want to try growing some of these foods. Okay, keep it simple. Okay. So I kept it simple. We went through foods A to Z and all the different benefits of certain foods. My encouragement for you to have that one resource is that's one you can go through pretty quick. It has been researched. If you want to research it deeper, be my guest. But it has been researched to the point where you should be able to just kind of highlight some foods on there and say, I need to incorporate more of these. I don't eat those. And then see how my body responds. Listen to the most important doctor in the room, the one that's sitting in the chair. That's the most important and most accurate doctor in the room. See, modern medicine's got it flipped. They want you to believe that when they walk in the room, they're the most important and knowledgeable, right? Trusted intermediary on your behalf. But the truth of the matter is, you have all the solutions inside of you, and that's what needs to be brought forth. You don't have a drug deficiency, okay? It's just not going to happen. 140, let's see, banana fact sheet. For those of you who are trying to lose weight, do not eat bananas. Hey, thank you. Good to see you, dear. Catherine. She brought me some handouts. I want to make sure you guys will have them tonight. Yeah, you too, kiddo. So the banana fact sheet. You will not experience a metabolism that can burn fat if you're eating bananas. It's not going to happen. There are some other interesting things in there. Also, if you're on phase 1, initially for that first 30 days, some of you are, some of you aren't, that's kind of a no-no because of the sugar content. But there are some interesting facts that we've accumulated and put together for you regarding bananas. Next one is 146 reasons why sugar is destroying your health. It says ruining. It's not my flyer, so she wrote ruining. Nancy Appleton, she's an amazing doc down in Florida, Sarasota, Florida. She wrote a book, Lick the Sugar Habit. I believe it's in your handouts. That's the next handout that should be in there is 146 reasons. It's fascinating, all the things that sugar is involved with. And yeah, I saw your lips earlier as you said sugar when I said what are the 2 things I avoided. Both of those foods, by the way, that I talked about, rapidly convert to sugar, okay? So you're absolutely right. And here's the thing, if a person wants to get healthy and they want to have a joyful experience in doing it, why do we need 146 reasons why sugar is ruining your health? If you're serious about getting your health back, 3 or 4 should be sufficient. In 1895 in America, the average annual sugar consumption in America was a half a pound a year.
Is that 1897?
1895. Half a pound a year. Today, it's a half a pound a day. A day. Of foods that convert to sugar. I gotta tell you this. I was gonna say this for later, but it's just blowing my mind. I gotta spit it out. Or it'll just keep bugging me. How many McDonald's does Cheyenne, Wyoming have?
Too many.
5. She nailed it. According to McDonald's Corporation, the population of our area should only have 2. Okay, so that's one thing that's alarming. Now, of those 5 McDonald's, how much revenue annually? Just guess. In little old Cheyenne, that 5 McDonald's generates. How much?
25 million.
Close.
30.
Close.
40.
35. 35 million a year in Cheyenne, Wyoming, because one of my very few activities to de-stress and disconnect, I like to play poker. And one of the GMs for McDonald's and I kind of get to talking now and then. So that's how I found out about that. It's tragic. That's not even food. That's food stuff filler, right? And it's all about right here. And if you can get this, I tell people all the time, the 2 brains, the gut brain right here, the problem is there's this nasty neighbor that lives between the 2 called the mouth. And the mouth influences what it wants, right? And it overrules the brain and gives the gut what this thing wants instead of what this thing knows it should have. Yeah, we all have that. I know what it's like to get horrendously unaddicted to sugar. About 25 years ago, you're looking at a guy that used to consume between 6 and 8 Mountain Dews a day, never drank an ounce of water, and on the floorboard of my pickup truck, it was riddled with Reese's Peanut Butter Cup and Butterfinger wrappers. Just talking about it makes my mouth water. You know? So I know what it's like to overcome that stuff. I do. If you want to really see an exaggerated version of what I went through, losing 36 pounds, getting off the, going through the withdrawals, the snoring, the no sleep, all that stuff. How many of you have heard of a guy by the name of Drew Manning? Drew Manning. I know it sounds like a football player, but it's not. Drew Manning. Okay? Well, you need to look him up. He's fascinating. This young man is a personal trainer, and he's got a website called Fit to Fat to Fit Again. As a personal trainer and an athlete all through high school, he never experienced what it was like to have his metabolism slow down and have all these problems. Okay? So here's what he was a coach, but he wanted to empathize with people better. He wanted to really connect. So he knew what he was talking about when it comes to craving foods and the emotional upset and all of a sudden the stress and succumbing to it. So he purposely stopped going to the gym and put on 76 pounds. Purposely. And once he hit 76 pounds, he shows a before and after. Then he purposely set out to the goal was to lose it in 6 months. He set a goal to lose it in 6 months. It's a fair goal. 2 3/4 pounds a week, 3 pounds a week, something like that, right? So not bad, okay? And he shows the before and then the 76 pounds, and then it comes out. And if you go to his website, fittofattofit.com, and he did this in 2012. I believe it was 2012. Fascinating story. But what he learned from that personal experience, priceless as a coach. Because he knows what it's like to hurt and to gasp and to not have stamina. He knew he could empathize with people who were struggling with their health because of this. Okay? And then he did it again, I think, 3 years ago. He put himself through it twice. Where he gained all that weight. And this guy's, he's ripped, right? Navy SEAL body, man. Right? And it showed him before and after, and it shows what he went through. And shows him sitting at the table with a box of double stuffed Oreos and a gallon of milk, and he's just doing this, washing it down with milk to gain weight. It's crazy what he did to himself. But he had to do it to empathize. Different names of sugar control diet. A lot of people talk to me about whether or not they're addicted to sugar, they have a sugar problem, or no, my diet's clean. Okay, well, do me a favor. Follow the sugar control diet for 2 weeks, let me know how you feel. Usually in 3 days they call me up, I got a headache, I don't feel good. Great, you're detoxifying. Have a nice day. Click. Because you're detoxifying from sugar, right? Sugar withdrawal. So it's kind of an interesting diet that if you wish you want to try it for just a couple of weeks. It's not something you do it forever, but a couple of weeks. Well, some of those things you should do forever. This next one's kind of interesting, the different names for sugar. If you look in your handouts, you'll see that there's 3 columns, front and back. Most people don't realize, or they've been told, of the importance of reading the labels, but they really don't know what they're looking for. Here is the number one habit to get into. This will save you so much time and effort and future ill health. If it's on a label, and if you can't pronounce it, it's not a food. If you can't pronounce it, it's not food. For whatever reason, they put titanium oxide in food. Apparently, it gives it a real pretty white color. Titanium oxide is not food.
That's what you paint with.
You're right. It's a paint pigment. It's exactly right. And it's in food. They really love putting it in gum. You'll find it in gum a lot. So be aware. Nightshades. This is one when people are suffering from chronic pain. It should have a handout in there. You don't have the nightshade handout? Can I see yours? It should look like that. One page. No? I will get you one when we are
Wait a
done.
minute. No.
Nightshades? Okay. I will get you one. Chronic pain issues, nightshades. Tomatoes, potatoes, yams, eggplant, peppers, things of that nature. Be very careful with it with a chronic pain case. The inflammatory elevation is strongly associated with nightshades, is very well documented. The nightshades, let me see yours real quick. Thank you. Yeah, Sherry Rogers, Pain Free in 6 Weeks. She's out of Sarasota, Florida, excuse me. There's Sherry Rogers, great book that details the inflammatory pathways and how they're amplified because of these certain foods. So some of which we're told are really healthy. So,
What is that book called?
Pain Free in 6 Weeks by Sherry Rogers. It's on the bottom of the flyer. Death Begins in the Colon. Pretty interesting handout. 52 different physicians got together during a conference in, I want to say, Great Britain, and they compared notes. And one of the things they discovered was the putrefaction, the rancidity, the buildup, the mucosal lining that goes in this 26 foot of piping from ear to ear, contained all the different chemicals and pollutants the body was having trouble getting rid of because it was just constantly being dumped in there day after day after day. And they talked about elimination problems, about metabolic problems, cognitive function, immune system, chronic reinfections over and over and over, and the list goes on and on. So it's a really good handout. Again, it's a quick read, but you need to be aware of it because this is the area we're going to take care of once we get through these resources. Got milk should be renamed Got Pus. I always like saying that. Got Pus. Eric Daniels did a really good job doing some research across the country, Harvard, some of the allergy clinics out in California, kind of pieced the things together quickly, but it's there, it's sufficient. It certainly is enough information to give you to help you make a wise decision that unless you're a baby calf and you're nursing off a mother cow, you got no business drinking milk. We're the only mammals on the planet that insist our kids drink milk after being weaned. You don't see the cow chasing the calf around here, nurse. They don't do that, right? So, if you have a cow or a goat, and you milk it yourself, right? That's probably real food. But once man has tampered with it to the degree that we tamper with it in this country, it becomes nothing more than a protein globulin that actually, if you take, if just an exaggeration or an example, if milk protein was this big, after they pasteurize and homogenize it, it grows it down to about like that. So here's what happens. The protein shrinks in size, but maintains its density. So it gets heavier. It doesn't get lighter, it just shrinks in size, okay? So that's where these foreign proteins, one way, there's others, but this is one of the main ways that proteins get into the bloodstream before they're supposed to be there. They get absorbed through either because of leaky gut, permeability in the gut, or they bypass, they don't get broken down properly in the digestive process. And anytime you get a foreign protein past the gut barrier and into the bloodstream for the liver to process and try to kick out, what does that stimulate? If you get
Immune system.
100%. Anytime you are introducing a foreign protein to the body that didn't get broke down properly by entering here, purified in the tank, okay, and then emulsified and broken down through the small intestine, the villi, if you don't have that process happen properly and somehow gets into there as an unmetabolized protein, immune system goes up every time. It's pretty fascinating. In the 70s, I think, and don't quote me on this, I should probably look this up if I'm going to say it, but I will. In the 70s, we didn't have near the over 160 autoimmune diseases that we say we have today. And autoimmune diseases are your immune system's attacking a portion of your body. It could be connective tissue, it could be specific gland, it could be bone, but your immune system's attacking you. Why? Because there is a foreign substance present that should not be there. The macrophages kick in, they go up, especially you see this in type 1 diabetics. You see this in type 1 diabetics all the time, every time. They have a metal or chemical, possibly an immune challenge. They always have a metal and chemical toxicity that shows up in evaluation. And this stuff has parked itself in what's called the Isle of Langerhans, and that's where the beta cells are for the pancreas, between the head and the tail for enzyme and insulin production. And what happens is the macrophage start attacking that cell, and the cell releases a chemical, says, "Don't do that, it's me, I live here," right? Okay, or something like that. And the macrophage stops, says, "Whoa, that's weird. You don't look like you belong here, but so I'm supposed to attack you, but then you spoke to me in the language I understand." So then they go, let's get the T cells and the K cells on the scene. These guys don't know how to figure it out, right? Calling the T cells and K cells like the Arnold Schwarzenegger of the immune system. They walk up and they go, "Macrophage, you dummy, kill it!" And man, then the war's on. They start breaking that healthy tissue down. And voila, autoimmune disease, type 1 diabetes. And that's just one of many examples. But this, consuming foods like this, that have been processed beyond what they're supposed to be, they're no longer a health food, or a full food, a whole food, right? Been processed into a substance, a filler type food, that's what happens. There's a reading list in there for future education, and I'm gonna point out that reading list, I've got a bunch of these if anybody wants them. I use Saline River Press out of Colorado. These guys are one of the best publishing companies on the planet. You can buy any book in that list. You can buy almost any book from them, and you get it at the same price I can get it from. There's things in here anywhere from lectures from Dr. Royal Lee, which is for professional organizations. You won't find that interesting at all. That's going to be like real heady. But then right underneath it, why your doctor uses nutritional supplements. So you're going to find a blend of really high-level or mid-level layperson information that you need to know. These guys are really good. And the last thing on your resource list, reprogramming and what is a healing crisis. Anytime people start, sometimes it goes way overboard, but sometimes when people start a program, they'll feel worse before they feel better. And what's happening is you're giving the body the raw materials it needs to either dump toxins out a little too fast, right? That can happen. And you'll also, the reprogramming piece is when you look at that chart, you can be here for 6 months. And let's say you used to have migraines 10 years ago. And you follow a program and you're being pretty consistent with it. You're getting better, feeling better, and all of a sudden you start having symptoms you haven't had in years. And it's like, this is terrible. That's back. Hear it all the time. Like, yeah, it is back, but the human body heals in this fashion. From the top down, from the inside out, and in the reverse order of symptoms it experienced. Remember that. The human body heals, reprograms, from the top down, inside out, and in the reverse order that an ill health developed. And I've seen that happen with people. 6 months, a year, 2 years in, and they'll come in one day and say, "Oh, I don't know what's going on with my program. What did you do to my program?" Right? Hear it all the time. I haven't experienced that in years, and it's back. How dare you give me acne at 57 years of age? Right? Or whatever. And we have to just address it. We just address it, right? But we understand that is part of that reprogramming cycle. We might like change detoxers or whatever. It never, again, as I said earlier, it never takes as long to get well as it took to get ill. But as in the process of getting well, you may experience some of these old things, so you need to be aware of it. Here's how the body works, in a nutshell. I'll get through this quickly, and we'll get into the meat. The only thing the bodies can do is food for nutrition in order to perform its two most important vital functions, to cleanse and to nourish. If your body can't cleanse itself and can't nourish itself, you're done. It's just a matter of time. Those are the two primary most important functions the human body has. So when you eat food, ask yourself, I wonder, is this going to cleanse me or nourish me? Not is this going to taste good. We got to get it past that. You got to get past this taste equals pleasure thing, right? You got to get more into is this going to cleanse me or is it going to nourish me? If we can start developing that habit. No one does it perfectly, including me. Now, the body will use that food as either a non-useful byproduct and will discard it. It'll store it in the body for future use or elimination. And it's important to remember that there is only one thing that provides the genuine replacement parts that will restore, rebuild, and repair the human body. There's the only thing that contains the genuine replacement parts. I'm going to give you a list of what those replacement parts are here pretty quick. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them, but you need to be aware of what these machines need fuel-wise, properly, daily. You're going to need to know what that is. The only thing that provides that is food. There never has been, there is currently not, nor will there ever be in the future a drug that will do in the human body what food does. Food restores function. Drugs hide dysfunction. That's the bottom line truth. That's the bottom line way it is. And no matter how you feel about it, doesn't matter what you think about it, it is what it is. Kind of like gravity. If I go out and jump on the roof, climb up on the roof and jump off, guess what? I know I can fly. I know I can fly. And then you can fly. The truth is what the truth is, right? Gravity is what gravity is. It's a gravity issue. Food restores function. Drugs hide dysfunction. Period. So you need to remember that. One of the pioneers, and this is where we're going to go to page 1. This is just the one-page handout, daily nutritional intake. We're going to get you some specific goals and some things to think about as you shape your future habits. This gentleman, Dr. Bernard Jensen, has quite an extensive track record. In fact, nobody in this room, including me, has ever met anybody who had more experience than this man with helping actual people get well. And I don't know about you, but credibility matters. Credibility matters. And he was just one of many that we were required to study and learn his philosophy, his resources, how to demonstrate the use of those resources, and then evaluate people's reuse of them and refine it down the road. He originated iridology. How many of you ever heard of iridology? Oh wow, you gotta look it up. It's amazing. It's fascinating. They can take a picture of the iris, blow it up digitally, do a neurological overlay on that iris blown up, and look at every nerve pathway in the human body. This guy was so good at it, he could tell you, what's your health been like the last 10 years? If you ever broke a bone and where, just from the eyes. No intake, no fill out the survey, right? How your health is performing right now, and what you're going to be like in the next 5 to 10 years if you don't change your trajectory. He was that good at it. He developed iridology. My dad was an iridologist. When my dad read this book the first time in 75 or 78 or 82 or whenever it was that he read it, that's what prompted him to want to become an iridologist. He was already doing really leaning towards herbology then, but then it shifted gears and we did herbology and became an iridologist as well. And I remember him taking a look in the eyes, and we'd take pictures and we'd blow them up We had colored slides in those days, right? 20 years ago, we put little colored slides in the machine and then we'd look through it. And then you'd have this overlay, and it took him 4.5 hours to do one iridology report. But it was accurate. It was amazing what you could tell somebody about their eyes. In his lifetime, he saw over 400,000 people worldwide. He's written over 60 books on a variety of health issues, even some of his smaller books. Rid yourself of rheumatoid arthritis in 8 weeks. Books like that. I'm telling you, look him up. See, what we don't know is the biggest threat to what we don't know. Because we don't know it. And this isn't on the evening news, you know. Your tax dollars going to Ukraine, that's what's on the evening news. How we can better take care of ourselves is not going to ever make it. How many of you have seen the new food pyramid? You and I talked about this a little bit. Did you go look it up at all since we talked? No? Okay. Cocoa Fruity Pebbles and chocolate covered almonds and peppermint lattes and all this other stuff is healthier for you than meat. There's a real push to get rid of meat in this globally, right? Because a cow farted and it impacted the ozone or something. I don't know. I don't get it. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me, but there's a real push to get rid of that kind of stuff. Look it up, the new food pyramid. The one previous to that was a joke, and the one prior to that, most people don't realize, came out of the mind of the dairy industry marketing executive. He came up with it and submitted it and got it approved. Because when you have lobbying dollars, you can just about get anything approved. Yeah, just rubber stamp it. Right? All right. 1 month it takes to erase the effects of 1 year's worth of stress. So this is something that was, again, pattern recognition is a true science. It's a true science. It's real. Because it is what it is. It doesn't matter how I feel about it or what I think about it or how much discussion needs to go into it. If there's a pattern, then there it is. There's a pattern. Okay? And what he observed was that when a person starts a program, not only was this reprogramming thing an issue, but also that for every month a person is actually following the right program with their diet, lifestyle, stress reduction, and movement, and then supplementation. That's why they call it supplements, by the way, people. They should be the last thing on your list. I know that sounds odd coming from the guy that sells supplements, okay? But really, this is the key. Getting these 4 legs in place and getting these habits in place over the next 6 months to 6 years. And if you need supplementation here and there, so be it. Not, I'm going to do whatever I want because my life is what it is and I can't change it, that's just the way it is, but I'll just gobble down lots and lots of supplements. That'll make it better. And it doesn't work. I'm here to tell you it doesn't work. You might feel a little better, but it just doesn't work. And every month that you're doing that, you can wipe out a year's worth of stress. So you can kind of calculate in your head, okay, this is the thing I have, and this is how long I've had it. And if I've had that for 10 years, what he's saying is if I commit to this and do my part, then in about 10 months, I should see this basically eradicated. And the answer is yes. If these other things are in line, yes. For every year a person's had something, it takes about a month of doing the right thing to wipe out the stress created by it. So you go from being supported properly to stability to restoration. Okay? But there's no bypassing those phases. And that's why we have to be patient, be consistent, not perfect, and then put forth the right effort. He used to bring people to his organic farm in California, and before supplementation, he'd bring them out there and he'd have them eat for their condition. He'd show them how to eat. You just live with me. I'll teach you how to eat. We'll correct that. You can work, and I'll let you shovel manure and take care of the compost pile and collect the eggs out of the, you can just live here for a while and I'll teach you how to eat. Yeah, the guy was brilliant. His intellect's so superior to mine and most people in this arena, right? I mean, just fascinating. You don't need to really know this, but I want to share with you really quickly. Most people don't realize that there's over 100 different nutrients that you have to have on a daily basis just to maintain par. 24 amino acids, carbohydrates, essential fatty acids, 16 vitamins, 72 minerals, enzymes, phytonutrients, and last but not least, sun, oxygen, and water. That combination, and guess what? The combination needed by people of those That's where the difference comes in. Based on what factors? Their past diet, lack of movement, lack of proper rest, and lack of proper stress reduction. Everyone's different. That's the variable for everybody. Well, what about genetics? Oh, I'm glad you asked. Genetics plays a small role in this outcome. We've been told that genetics is the biggest thing, there's nothing you can do about it. Well, of course you want you thinking there's nothing you can do about it, so you do nothing about it. It's very simple. This is a business model. Modern disease management is a business model. Okay? It's disease management. It's not healthcare. It's disease management. So call it what it is. Let's just be truthful about it. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying if you get stuck in that, you can get some problems. So those are the 100 that are needed, daily basis. The variable is not genetics. Genome Project proved that over, 17, 18 years ago now, where they found the 5-foot ladder, the ladder strain in the cells, okay? They showed that your genetics has at the very most, and the reason they know this, because they studied identical twins, same genetics, one got this, the other didn't, 30% in your lifetime. 30%. Most people will experience about 10%. The rest of it, the vast majority, 70 to 90% of how your body performs over an extended period of time, decades, is based on your personal habits, period. And nobody's telling us to take personal responsibility for that, because they don't know how. Why? Because it's not in the system. Because. Yeah. 80-20, page 1. We're going to wrap this up. Oh, I'm so ahead. I got lots of time for questions tonight. 80-20 rule. This obviously comes from Jensen's work. Can I see yours, Jason? I just need to see the one sheet here. So, here's that book that's on the screen from Jensen. This is my copy. It's a little tattered and torn. Right? Required studies, clinical nutrition, naturopaths, okay? This is his book, okay? And here's my report card on his book. Which would you like to read? In the most overwhelming habits, pattern recognition, 6211 was the way that he had most everybody restore function. Now you got to remember, in the 70s, your food quality is a lot different. 53 years ago from today, a lot different. Sources and availability, a lot different. I understand that. I know there's variables. I would never use it as an excuse. I would just want to do more research. I would not want to be discouraged. I would want to be curious. Become curious about this. Don't be discouraged by it. Become curious about it, because it's going to be with you your entire life. These two right here, 6 vegetables, 2 fruits, that 80%, and a starch and a meat protein, that makes the 20. That is the dietary model that predominantly permeated that particular book that Jensen wrote. 1 meat protein, size of the palm of the hand. I always stretch my hand when I do that. About the thickness of a deck of playing cards. And I can tell you with all the cards I play, I know that's exactly the thickness of a deck of playing cards. And this is what we grade our food logs by, in case you were wondering. Fruits need to be eaten by themselves, away from primary meals as a snack. So when you think of fruit, try to develop the habit of 10 and 2. Kind of like what we were taught how to drive a car. 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. Because mid-morning is when people are kind of like, I'm kind of getting a little run down, a little pick-me-up, right? And definitely 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Quarter cup of strawberries, blueberries, blackberries. Grapes are a little bit too sweet, but get in the melon fruits, cantaloupe and honeydew and watermelon. Last resort is apples, oranges, bananas, pears, and grapes. Why? Because they're the highest in sugar. They're just the highest in sugar. Okay? They don't have the fiber offsetting the sugar content that they used to have. 55 years ago, the average orange had 50 milligrams of complex vitamin C. Today, it's 5. Why? Soil quality. Study 1926. By 1926 in America, the foods that were being grown commercially, the soil depletion was so bad already that they were seeing mineral deficiency diseases. Okay. There's another book, it'll come to me in a second, that I'll have to share with you. 6 vegetables. How hard is it to get 6 vegetables a day? I got mine in a salad. Most days I do a smoothie. I've got superfood in the back. I like superfood. I just shake it up in one of those rattle shakers with water and slurp it down. Tastes like a freshly mowed yard. You'll love it. It really does. It really does. But if you do it every day, if you're consistent, and that first sip, something that's interesting about smoothies, the first sip, swish it really good before you swallow. Here's what a lot of people do with smoothies. If they've got something in there they don't like, or it's too green, is they go, and then they get a gut ache, and then guess what? They blame superfood for kicking them in the gut. This tells this what's coming. If food is not fully masticated right here, chewed up thoroughly, or if it's liquid, swish it properly to develop salivation so the stomach knows what's coming, your gut's gonna say, whoa, what did you do to me? I can't have this in here, I'm not ready for that. How dare you?
Send it back.
Or it'll send it back. You're right. All right, the dirty half dozen. Dirty half dozen. White sugar, white flour, dairy products from grocery stores. Notice I didn't say dairy products from cows and goats directly, but grocery stores. Pork, fruits, fried, and oils, and margarine. Let's start with the white sugar. I think that one's been hit on enough tonight. I mean, if you're not thoroughly convinced that this is the most erosive substance on the planet that you can stick inside of your body on a regular basis, then I don't know how to stand in the gap between you and you are convinced you're going to run off the cliff. I'm running for the cliff. Don't get in my way. Don't try to stop me. I'm fully committed. Right? Then there's nothing I can do about that. White flour products. White flour products. How many of you, paper mache, you ever worked with paper mache? What do they do that with?
Water and flour.
Why do they do it with flour?
Sticks.
It makes it into a glue.
Because, thank you, it's the original wallpaper paste.
Sticky.
Did you know that? Building homes. I grew up in the 60s. My dad was a builder in Montana, and I remember some of the remodels that his crew would do when they weren't building, they were remodeling because they had to keep them busy. And there was, they would find, I remember peeling that off. And it was as solid and strong and hard in the 70s as it was in the 40s when they put it up. I mean, that stuff glued good. And when you eat that stuff and it travels through this 26 foot of piping, it leaves behind its own little layer of goodies. Covered in fecal matter the next day. Next day, a little more white flour products, then covered with fecal matter. Next day, and over time, this stuff builds up. I'm going to show you some pictures. I hope none of you have a weak stomach. And it's 100% standard American diet. All these colitis and IBS and all these syndrome, all these different weird, wacky gut things, right? The chronic, non-resolving, never taken care of or leaving C. diff cases. Did you know that one of the treatments for C. diff years ago, I don't know if they still do it, is to find a donor. You know what I'm going to say? Yeah. It's to find a donor to donate some poop. And then they would emulsify and break down that poop and liquefy it, stick a tube through the nose. This is the truth. This is a medical procedure. Tube the person to their gut and re-inoculate their gut with healthy flora because the terrain was so disrupted and so barren and had such an inability to actually cultivate its own good bacterial cultures that they had to give it a blast to someone else's. That's over the edge, is it, Rethel? That's not
You
good.
can't throw yeast in like a septic system?
Yeah. Well, it would produce yeast. It'd keep them sick. The yeast would take over everywhere. Yeah. Dairy products. Already told you about dairy products. Nothing but pus in a jug. 7 out of 10 people that drink it on a regular basis have a sensitivity to it and don't even know it. 7 out of 10. That's the average according to Mr. Daniels and his flyer and I think it's the allergy clinic it was one of the allergy clinics or one of the clinics out in California. Pork, the reason pork makes the hit list is because it is very good at supporting bloodborne parasites. We can't cook them out.
Bacon, come on, dude.
Dude, I love bacon, okay? But just be ready to do a parasite cleanse about 3 times a year, 4 times a year. Yeah, and the heat won't kill them. One of the exercises that my father did when he was doing his master herbalist class in Springville, Utah, eons ago it seems, was they cooked a pork roast, they put it on high overnight. Next morning they pulled out this little thing that looked like a briquette because they cooked it down. They sliced it up in real thin slices, and out the center they put plastic or rubber gloves on, put a piece of the meat in the palm of their hand, closed their hand, and kept it there for about an hour. And when they dropped the meat and pulled off the glove and put it under a microscope, you could see parasite activity. It's just one of those pattern recognition things.
Why wouldn't he kill him?
They were impervious to heat. It would kill the adults, but it wouldn't kill the eggs. So the eggs would, it killed the adults, but the eggs would survive.
So is it coming from the feed they're feeding the pigs?
No, it's coming from the fact that the environment of a pig will support that type of larva and not kill the pig. See, the pathology doesn't want to kill the host. It's looking for a place to live. And it lives really well. Those types of very strong type parasites live well in. Okay, I'm gonna say it anyways. We had a gal here from Hormel. And she was sitting right there where that lady is in the back. And when I started telling this story, she just did one of these. And I thought either she disagrees or she has a story to tell. So I just asked her, so what is your experience with this? Because obviously you're responding to this. She said, I used to work at Hormel. And on slaughter day for pigs, that's the most time that people would not show up for work. When they knew it was scheduled pig slaughter day. Because it wasn't so bad to slaughter the animals because that's what we were used to. It's that the removal of the gut piles and all the parasite activity we would see in the guts grossed people out. Killing them didn't bother them. Processing them didn't bother them. It was cleaning the gut piles. Pretty crazy.
So can we eat antelope sausage?
Absolutely, you eat all you want. Food's fried in oil. Obviously, we don't need to go into this too in depth. When you overheat oils, you get them one molecule away from a plastic. And if your body can't process it, remember one of the earlier slides, if it can't process it and it can't discard it, it'll store it for later discard or use. Clogging of the old arteries. And here's the thing too, if cholesterol was such a big bad boogeyman number and a strong positive indicator of a disease pathway pattern, why is it that Eskimos have between 450 and 550 in cholesterol and almost 0 cardiovascular incidents? Why is that? If cholesterol is such a big bad boogeyman. We have, 20 years ago, allowable cholesterol rates in America was 300. Did you know that? 25 years ago, allowable cholesterol rates in America was 300. Today it's what? 200. Why?
Greenbacks.
Because they have a drug that'll make it go from 300 to 200. That's exactly why.
Big pharma.
When they introduced that, because they had to change it, because here's the thing, if you're going to increase profit margin, marketability, market share, you either have to come up with a way to expand the cost of your product or get that product into the hands of more people. It's basic business 101. Has nothing to do. Here's the thing that's fascinating. The that's the government accounting office, GAO.gov, when you look up the year that these things came out, these two things, especially margarine, and the relationship between heart attack, stroke, and cardiovascular incidents, skyrocketed. 200, and here's the thing, there's another guy, you want to look this guy up, he's not in your notes, he's not in your resources, but he's a fantastic resource. Look this guy up. Dr. Joel Wallach. How many of you remember the Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom? 3 of us. Ouch. Okay, 5, 6. Okay. Yeah, the rest of them are too young. Remember the vets that they had on Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom? There was a tall, slender, real handsome, rugged-looking guy, and there was kind of a short, paunchy, really dark-haired, big black walrus mustache guy. That's Joel Wallach from Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, the guy that looked like that, little paunchy guy. He wrote several books called Let's Play Herbal Doctor and some other things. He's most famous for, and some of you might remember this, Dead Doctors Don't Lie. Dead Doctors Don't Lie. He got jerked up in the courts over that one several times. They said, well, why are you taking him to court? He says, well, because you're saying that the average medical doctor lived to the age of 57. He says, well, I was being nice, I rounded up. He says, yeah, but you're lying, it was 56.10. When he goes into court, he has these trolley cars behind him, 3 or 4 guys behind him. When he goes into court, of all his provings of how mineral deficiencies in that slide I showed you about the 100 nutrients, and primarily it's minerals, 72 different minerals daily, with 16 or 17 activating vitamins to get those to activate properly. That is 80% of all illness is because of those 2 deficiencies right there. And he proved it. He proved it. So when he goes into court, and this was several years, this is the 80s or 90s, but when he go into court, he just put them all down there and he said, we have 14,700 entries, Your Honor. Case studies and research and provings that nutrition cures every illness that a person can acquire. Here's Exhibit 1. Here's Exhibit, and just case dismissed. He's the only man right now currently that I'm aware of, and I could be wrong on this or maybe more, he's the only man I know that can actually make medical claims about nutrition legally. Dr. Joel Wallach. His other tapes that followed up his 1970s, 80s tape on Dead Doctors Don't Lie, he's still running around the country lecturing, by the way. 89, 90, something like that. His Dead Billionaires Don't Lie and Dead Politicians Don't Lie. You gotta look those up, they're great. You talk about stirring the pot with those, I love this guy. Margarine, how many of you remember, know where margarine came from?
They fed pigs or something with it.
Yeah, with the feedlots. Yeah, they actually produced it because, again, they were trying to come up with a way to make more money. So the only way that you make more money is you either can bump the price or reduce the cost of production. That is your profit margin. That's the only 2 things. Or get more distribution. Okay? And so when they developed that, they started feeding cows and turkeys. Is what they were feeding. And the problem was they were processing oils, giving it to them, and it was working great. They were putting weight on like crazy. It was working beautiful. Problem was, after about 14 weeks, these things started dropping dead in the feedlots. Ka-thud. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is no good. We can't have this. I know. Let's repackage it and sell it to people. You're right, Lane. Let's repackage it and sell it to people. And here's our tagline. Eat our margarine. It's lower in cholesterol than butter. And how many remember the very first one that came out? Nope. Oleo.
Yeah, it was in all the recipes, his mother's recipes at that.
Yep, if you look at her, yep, it's her 3x5 cards.
Butter thing.
Yeah,
Butter.
yeah, we got rid of it and go butter, yeah. And there was lard, you did lard or oleo, right? But that's what it was. And then here's the funny thing about oleo. When it came out, it was white. People wouldn't eat it until they added a chemical dye pack that made it yellow so it would look like butter. And then they gobbled that stuff up like no tomorrow. And heart attack, stroke, and cardiovascular incidences skyrocketed after that. Eat our margarine, lower in cholesterol and butter. But it's a wax and it'll kill you. We can't tell you that though. Eat butter. And that stuff that says, can't believe it's not butter, believe it, it's not butter.
I'm telling you, they're not lying.
They're not lying. Like, believe it, it's not butter. So stay away from that stuff. Eat butter. I'll tell you the one I love, and I'm telling you, I can eat this stuff like a banana. Kerrygold. In the gold label, not the green, the gold label. I'm telling you, Jason, you could peel that thing like a banana. You could eat that stick of butter like a banana. It's so good.
It's from Ireland, right?
It's from Ireland, yeah. What's that? Irish whip, yep. So good. What you're looking at is the effects of the standard American diet. If you want me to, I can pass these around. This is the gross part. You're looking at the effects of the standard American diet. These did not come out of cadavers. Okay? This one right here came out of a 12-year-old girl, and they used a Kalima board. A Kalima board is a hybrid between a colonic and an enema. Kalima board is kind of a hybrid between the two. It is a kind of a bench with a screen that fits into the toilet, and after you've been drinking this slurry of apple pectin, pharmaceutical grade charcoal, bentonite clay, and whole flax seeds as in a slurry, as it travels through this 26 foot of piping, it draws. It's a natural drawing agent and starts pulling out the white flour products, the mucus buildups, the polyps. That's a polyp right there. These are false encasements and mucosal linings. I don't know if I can make this work right. Yeah, it did work. This is all mucus. Now here's, in the colon, it looks clear. In the colon, it looks like a real clear, shiny colonoscopy. Here we go. It's all clear. It could be that thick of that mucosal lining that's built up over time. And certain aspects of that photography can't get to all areas completely. But, and they're only doing the large intestine. What you're dealing with are things that are actually plugging up the villi in the small intestine, because the small intestine is 20 foot of piping versus just 6, and the large 6 to 8, 6 to 7. And the villi is where all the food is absorbed. So they either get laid down by this stuff, or they get drawn together, or they get plugged up this way. Now, because it has the surface area of a tennis court, you can abuse yourself for decades before you start feeling the ill effects of abusing yourself for decades. That's where we get tricked. We can misbehave, I should say, for a long period of time before we see these things manifest, okay? So, if you've lived in America any length of time, you have to a lesser or greater degree, these deposits, they're just not black. Because when you drink that slurry, it's the charcoal and the apple pectin, those things that make it dark as it's extracting, okay? People that do bowel cleanses here won't see something like that, but they will see a dark fluffiness, and every now and then they'll see weird shapes, okay? When they do the bowel cleansing process through the clinic. My most challenging case with this one time, this lady was diagnosed with cancer on 4 different occasions. When we muscle tested to see how many of these she needed to do, her body tested for 7. Most people test for like 3 to 4, 2 to 3, back to back. Takes a couple of weeks, okay? And then you're done, take a break, okay? About halfway through her 4th one, she gets a hold of me and she says, I gotta show you something, I'm scared. So what happened? She goes, I passed this thing, and I don't know what it is, but it came out in this cleanse. You got me doing this cleanse, and I think I'm, she thought I maybe I passed her gallbladder out or something, I don't know. And I said, well, you kept it? just for me. And she says, yes. And I said, well, will you bring it to the clinic? She says, okay. She had actually put it in a jar in water, and it stood up. It was about that long, and it looked like a braided rope. Okay, like a serrated, braided rope. And she brought it in, and I said, how long has it been like that? She goes, well, it's been there 2 or 3 days. It hasn't moved or anything. And I says, so we put it on, I had a cutting board in the old lab. This was when I was in 1807. And I put it on this cutting board. I took a serrated knife and literally had to saw at this thing. It was that hard. That's how impacted she was with white flour and white flour products and mucus and fecal matter that had covered that over the years. And she figured it extended her life maybe 5-6 years. She still passed away, but she lived a lot longer than they said she ever would. But what she was looking at, when you see those kind of pictures, you're looking at the cause of most chronic illness, including cancer. The human body gets deficient, immunosuppressed, chemically overwhelmed, and viral activity. And bam, there's your recipe. We see it all the time. Getting ready to wrap it up. Oh, good. Consistency is more important than perfection. Don't do this stuff perfectly. Adapt new habits over time, being as consistent as you can with water and all the other things. Identify a few things that you want to do and start working on them. Be as compliant as you can. Only by cleansing and nourishing are you going to restore, rebuild, and repair function. And review your handouts for future discussion. Bring your questions to your visits. 3 or 4 at a time. Remember the resources that are available. First and third Tuesday every month is the clinic orientation. Fourth Tuesday, this class is open to the public. Subscribe to Total Wellness Radio on any of your podcast channels or stations that you like to listen to, Spotify or Podbean or whatever. I think that's carried right now on like 14 different platforms. And obviously when it comes to share the care parties, ask about the front desk about share the care parties. This is where I come and do demonstrations in your home or office or church or whatever, and we put 2 or 3 people together and I put them on the table and I tell them all the naughty things they're doing to themselves. And I do have a messaging service that I'm getting people lined out on. That's the phone number. You're going to want to take that phone number down, because if you see a text from me or that number, that's me, okay? And it'll say Dr. Dan or whatever, okay, here. But I'm doing it for announcements and upcoming events and things like that. I'm trying to communicate a little more consistently with people. So for those of you that don't want to ever be on that, just say don't put me on that. It's never going to be more than 1 or 2 announcements, every hour. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe 1 or 2 a week, right? But about announcements or, hey, did you do this today? A little reminder, things just so people are being consistent with their habits. So, all right. Shall I turn everything off and we can ask questions? Is that how you wish to do it, or does anybody have questions? It doesn't matter. Yes, Misty.
How come you don't start people with cleansings?
You know what? That's a very good question. Years ago, there was a clinic in San Diego, and that's what they did. Is they put a person on a bowel cleanse and superfood and said, do 3 bowel cleanses and be on superfood, and we'll see you in 90 days. Half the time, most of those people would not return. They didn't need to. They didn't need to. Because when you cleanse and nourish, especially when you get this 26-foot of piping going and you get that nutrition coming back, after about 90 days, most people, but that was in the 70s. And so I've thought very hard, that's a great question, I've thought very hard about doing that, just saying, look, start here. Because the thing we're not going to treat anyways, we know you need cleansed and nourished, but the difference is now with kinesiology, we can get a different idea of where we should start. That's all. And some people can't handle it. They're so toxic. You go in there and start stirring up the bowel, and they don't understand this reprogram or healing thing. And if I don't explain it properly enough, it just goes sideways. So, but that's a good question. I've thought about that many times. With the testing, we can kind of get a better idea of what to prioritize and where to go. So, anybody else? Yes.
Have you heard of the book, Minerals for the Genetic Code?
No.
I was reading that, and that's what got me thinking about nutrition and how to avoid having to go to the doctor for pharmaceutical products.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like an intriguing book. My experience is that everybody needs the nutrition. Genetics isn't going to matter. It's the weaknesses that you might have. It's what chemicals are you exposed to that I'm not exposed to, right? I got a gentleman that's a farrier, okay? It's one of my clients, but he also does all of his own leather work. So when he's not driving nails through horse's foot and heating shoes, okay, he's in his own man cave is covered complete with all this leather, chemically treated. He's constantly got metal and chemical toxicity stuff showing up on him. So we're constantly trying to work through that. Well, he's not going to get rid of his hobby, So the best we're gonna do is support him through that. But his environment's different, so the mineral demands for him are much higher. Because in the absence of good organic minerals, the body will not detoxify metals and chemicals. In the absence of proper thyroid and adrenal function, the body can't detoxify these things that accumulate, right? So it's an intriguing title. I have not read it, I have not heard of it, but I just know that what everybody needs, regardless of genetics. So. Is that it? We're good? Thank you guys for being here. I'm gonna turn these off.